On the 2nd of August 1982, our family went on a 2-week camping trip in Grey Wells Provincial Park in Canada. There were 3 generations that went on this trip together. There were the parents, Bob and Jackie Johnson, and their 2 young daughters, 11-year-old Karen and 13-year-old Janet. Jackie's parents also came along, George and Edith Bentley. The family wanted to create some memories, but what happened to them is beyond chilling. The family were keen campers, and being out in nature was something they loved dearly. Wells Grey Park was a rather remote place. The Johnson family set up their camp at a secluded area near the old Bear Creek site. The Bentleys soon arrived to join them, with their truck, campervan and boat. While on this specific trip, the adults slept in the camper attached to George's truck, while the 2 girls slept in the tent. Bob had booked a few weeks off from work, so he could relax and enjoy his time with the family. But on the 16th of August, Bob failed to return to work. His fellow colleagues were rather confused by his absence. He had been an employee for over 25 years, and he had never failed to come into work without first informing his colleagues. This was extremely out of character. Days went by, and still there was no sign of Bob. Bob's colleagues had tried their best to contact him and his family, but to no avail. Eventually, on the 23rd of August 1982, they reported Bob and his family missing. The police searched for the family through the Wells Grey area, but they were nowhere to be seen. A man was foraging for wild mushrooms and berries when he stumbled upon a totally burnt out car. The car was the same that the Johnsons were driving. The forager called the police immediately, and investigators soon arrived and began to examine the scene. When they looked in the back of the car, they discovered the charred bones of what appeared to be adult humans. Detectives were quickly dispatched, and the bones were taken away for identification. It was confirmed that the skeletal remains were that of Bob and Jackie, George and Edith. All of them had been shot. The trunk of the car was also searched, and in the trunk were the remains of the 2 girls, Karen and Janet. Both of these girls had been shot in the head. The car was found in an unusually inaccessible location, so the investigators believed that the murders had taken place somewhere else, and that the car had been driven there in an attempt to throw off investigators and or to hide evidence. The truck, camper and boat that George and Edith had brought on the trip were still missing. Park rangers and locals came forward stating that they had seen the family at Bear Creek. A search of the area uncovered .22 caliber ammunition shells, which matched the gunshots that killed the family. Evidence was found that the family was indeed in this location. Bottles of beer that Bob drank were found cooling in a stream. They also found 2 sticks that had been sharpened and stripped of their bark. These would have more than likely been used by the 2 young girls to toast marshmallows. The following year, in April of 1983, a reenactment of the killings was televised in the United States and in Canada too. The case was picked up by the media, which prompted tips from across the country. A promising lead came when someone claimed they had seen the exact same truck and camper in central Canada, driven by 2 scruffy French-Canadian men. And in the following month of May, an exact replica of the campervan was created in hopes that somebody would see it and remember something relating to the case. In total, 13,000 tips were called in, 300 of which stated that the camper had been seen driving across Canada. These leads went absolutely nowhere. The 2 French-Canadian men were driving a completely different vehicle. Hundreds of working hours were wasted on these wild goose chases. 14 months after the murders, on October the 18th, 1983, there was a breakthrough. 2 forest workers found the camper truck 15 miles away from the location where the murders had taken place. It was near Bear Creek, on an old logging road near Trophy Mountain. Whoever had killed the family had tried to drive the vehicle into a gorge, but there were too many logs in the way and they failed to do this. They then used a mixture of gasoline and some other flammable liquid to burn it. The police received criticism as the camper was so close to the murder site, and they had spent so much money and human resources into trying to find it. The burnt vehicle unfortunately had no clues inside, but the logged road was abandoned and not widely known. It was hard to access, and this information led the investigators to believe that whoever had done this was more than likely a local person who knew the area very well. A woman came forward with some information about a local 24-year-old man named David Shearing. David worked as a logger and had told her that he had found a vehicle with a bullet hole in it. Despite coming from a respectable family, David had previously been in trouble with the law on multiple occasions. He had been charged for assault, drug possession, drunk driving, and a hit and run. There were also rumours that he had a thing for young girls. He was also identified by someone who told the police that David had been trying to re-register a Ford pickup and had asked if this man could repair a hole in its door. David only lived 3 miles away from where the murders took place. David was brought in for questioning, and after some skillful interrogation, they got David to name the murder site, which had not yet been released to the public. He confessed to the crime. At first, he said the motive was to rob the family, but then he later admitted to the real sinister motive after he was convicted. But his initial confession was that he shot the 4 adults as they sat around the campfire, and then shot the girls as they slept in the tent. On April 17, 1984, David was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years. The police suspected that there was more to this crime, but they couldn't prove anything due to a lack of evidence. Then, the sergeant who worked on the case, named Mike Eastham, interviewed David again. He told David that he was here to find the truth. He knew that the motive was sexual. David then came clean. He said that he spotted the family the moment they set up camp, and he lurked in the shadows for days watching them. He lusted over the girls and wanted to sexually abuse them, even if he had to take the lives of the parents and the grandparents to do so. Fantasizing about having sex with them wasn't enough, and he decided to act. On the 10th of August 1982, David walked onto the campsite where the family was sitting round the fire and began to shoot. He then dragged the bodies into the back seat of the family car and covered them with a blanket. He then opened the tent where the sisters were sleeping, and he told them that a gang had come by the camp and that their parents had to run away. David told the sisters to come with him, and they did. He then took them to his property. He kept them alive for around a week, and in that time, he repeatedly forced himself upon Janet. On the 16th of August, he dragged Karen into the woods and told her to turn around. He then shot her in the head. The next day, on the 17th, he did the exact same to Janet. The fear these girls must have experienced is unimaginable. What is most frustrating about this case is that a prison guard had banged on the property where David was when he was with the girls. The prison guard was supervising some prisoners from a local jail who were fishing on a nearby river. He came to the door of the cabin just to inform David as to what was happening and not to be worried by the sight of so many prisoners. Before David opened the door, he told the girls to hide behind the door and to stay quiet. David opened up the door and spoke with the prison officer. The girls complied and remained silent. If they would have screamed for help, they could still be alive today. David was also one of the first people to be interviewed by the police. They had interviewed him months before he was caught. They had spoken to him in the backyard of the Shearing family farmhouse, and the murder weapon that he had used was hung on the wall inside. In 1995, David married a woman named Heather Ennis, and Heather has made some rather bold claims. She says that David deserves a second chance as a free man, stating that she has never seen such a change in a person. David was denied parole in 2012, and he then withdrew his application in 2014 when a petition with 13,000 signatures was presented to the National Parole Board. He is now eligible to apply every 2 years, and the next one is in July of this year. As I write this, it is just 1 month away. There is a link in the description if you want to sign it. Hopefully, we can keep him where he belongs and ensure this family get the justice they deserve.